Thank you for attending this presentation on an intelligent approach to enterprise data privacy. My name is Dan Everett. I'm Vice President of Product and Solution Marketing at Informatica. Organizations are embracing digital transformation, but how do they rapidly leverage their masses of data without increasing privacy risk? This slide here shows just a sample of some of the news around the California Consumer Privacy Act, which is just one regulation that's coming online. But really what it's telling us is that privacy is now a boardroom level conversation. And in fact, if you look across the world, 107 countries have privacy regulations now, according to the United Nations. And there seems to be no end in sight for countries, regions, states bringing new regulations into effect. Now, this is just an example of some sample regulations, and when we look at this, it's clear that there's a fair amount of overlap in requirements. Consequently, organizations should move away from a project-oriented approach to specific regulations and toward a regulatory sort of agnostic privacy program. That way you can better leverage what you've done to be compliant with one regulation to comply with other privacy laws. So in working with thousands of customers across all different industries, what we found is a framework for enterprise data privacy that really comprises of 6 steps. And we'll go through these in more detail. But this is a one framework that can be used to help you create that enterprise data privacy program and address multiple regulations. So the first step is really about defining and managing your policies. So, these could be policies around what data do we collect and how do we process that data. It can include policies around data quality, policies around retention and deletion, policies around access controls and transfer of data to third parties or across regional boundaries, and those sorts of things. So really, how is it that we are going to manage and govern the data that we have, as well as understand its use and if it's being used properly. The second step is to continuously discover the data stores and automation of data classification and mapping business processes, the data flow across business processes into the systems. So what's the location and volume of regulated data? Intelligently using data policies and understanding the combination of personal data and how it can be used for fraud or theft. And really need intelligence to understand these data combinations and the threats that they create. And where does the sensitive data originate? Where does it migrate to? Data proliferation analysis is key to understanding data movement and supporting things like ROPA reporting, record of processing activities and those sorts of things. Identity is a key requirement for data privacy. So this is really about, if you're thinking about data-centric requirements for data privacy, you really need to know, who is Dan Everett the same as Daniel Everett? And being able to actually consolidate those master data records, and then not only create you know, the identity of who I am, but also discovering the location of information that's related to me across the enterprise in the different data silos, in structured data in databases and applications, in unstructured data in documents and those sorts of things, in big data, and really resolve the identity and map the relationships of different data sources to the person, and then make that searchable inventory, you know, provide that so that we can understand where are a subject's all of their data. So without that, you know, you really can't do things like data subject access requests and being able to fulfill those. The next step is, you know, analyzing risk and establishing a protection plan. So not all data risks are equal, and organizations don't have endless resources and funds. So you really need to understand risk exposure and then prioritize your data privacy activities based on things with the highest priority. Data volume, number of users, protection status, proliferation, classification, and custom factors can all be used to provide a tailored view to each organization how, you know, which personal and sensitive data represents the greatest risk to the organization. And then use these scores to prioritize your remediation plan and look for areas of focus. Maybe it's specific geographies or departments or even particular users. And then obviously you need to implement the protection controls, access controls, data movement and proliferation controls, but also manage things like subject access requests. So implementing masking and encryption, integration with other tools that you may be using like Ranger or Sentry, integration with ticketing systems, things like ServiceNow, access controls or tokenizations, and really, you know, again, having that subject registry index that shows where all the information is, so that you can be accountable for providing, you know, what categories of personal information do you have, your purpose for collecting and using the information, third parties with whom, you know, you share personal information, managing things like deletion requests for personal data, and then being able to manage consent and history and keep a consistent manner in the way that you deal with those types of requests. And finally, measuring and communicating the audit readiness. So organizations, you need to continually monitor privacy compliance progress and communicate it across multiple stakeholders. Providing an abstracted view of indicators for decision makers with, you know, drill down for practitioners and auditors. So key risk indicators, reports that will support IT, audit, compliance support, risk for DevOps, privacy, supporting the CISO or security teams in regards to security decisions and data protection, as well as chief data officers and business units around things like data access requests and privacy readiness, and then being able to provide the full audit history to demonstrate and satisfy auditors that you're taking appropriate controls. For data privacy, there is no single role that controls all activities and programs. Collaboration needs to span, IT, the chief data officer, or the data governance office, legal teams, privacy and compliance teams. So having a framework for enterprise data privacy helps you address the needs of the various organizations and stakeholders that need to be involved to support data privacy. So what I'd like to do now is just give a few examples of how organizations in different industries are approaching data privacy. So a worldwide travel and tourism company was concerned about compliance readiness with GDPR and needed to ascertain the scope of the regulation and where data protection was needed. A financial services organization wanted to be audit ready and meet the data protection requirements for FINRA and other regulations. And then a media and entertainment organization was launching new applications and services and needed to ensure that personal and sensitive data wasn't exposed to their 700 plus testers around the world, and that data privacy activities didn't hamper quick provisioning of data to developers and testers. So for the travel and tourism customer, they not only wanted to stay compliant with regulations like GDPR, and now they're looking at CCPA, but they also wanted to be able to use the data ethically for analytics to create more memorable guest experiences. So the automation of discovery of sensitive data, of disparate data types, automation of risk aggregation and scoring, and elimination of manual in-house processes, automation of risk monitoring on an ongoing basis as sensitive data was added or moved throughout the enterprise, and then automation of the orchestration of risk notification as well as implementation of data protection controls was key for them to be able to, as I said, be compliant but also use the data for their analytics initiatives to drive better guest experiences. The financial services organization, they used risk analysis to prioritize the data protection need and locate all of their sensitive data. For them, they estimated saving tens of thousands of hours annually through automation and having a repeatable framework to address data privacy. They also lowered risk associated with the modernization of applications and systems and then moving some of those applications to the cloud. The media and entertainment customer was able to quickly identify sensitive data and production applications and then provide protected copies of the data to testers and developers. They were also able to show auditors the data used by testers is protected. So the benefits for them, they helped accelerate production test cycles. So they average beforehand was 2 to 3 weeks to get test data. Now they're able to do that in a matter of minutes or hours at the most. They reduced product testing time by 50% and shortened their product development cycles by up to 90%. So these are just a few examples of how customers have used this 6-step approach to both demonstrate compliance readiness for privacy regulations and protect data from unauthorized use. If you'd like to learn more about the 6-step process that we have, or about data privacy by design, or complying with specific regulations like GDPR or CCPA, or see a video of our products that help customers do that, you can learn more at www.informatica.com/product/datasecurity.html. So thank you for your time and attention in joining this webcast, and have a great day.